The United States and China are holding talks this week on how to deal with the growing threat of North Korea's nuclear and missile programs and how to rein in Pyongyang. But are the discussions too little and too late? And who's to blame for allowing North Korea to attain this threatening posture anyway? We're going to talk with Bryan Dean Wright, the former CIA covert operations officer whose work within the agency focused on counterterrorism and weapons of mass destruction. Bryan, you said that both Republican and Democratic presidents have been unable or unwilling to fix the North Korean crisis. Explain how can they fix it?
Well, first you have to understand what they've tried to do, and then we can get into how do we fix it. What they tried to do is effectively this. They tried to chase after of North Korea's total income, that is the amount of foreign revenue that they would use to build their nuclear weaponry. We only chased after about 1 to 3% of it. In other words, we left 97% on the table for Kim Jong-un and his crazy band of men and women to build their nuclear arsenal. So that's why sanctions failed. Unlike, say, Iran, where we hit a heck of a lot higher percentage, we simply didn't go after enough of the money. And we are where we're at today. We have ballistic missiles that can reach the totality of the United States, particularly if you believe in a missile called the Musadam. We've got multiple nuclear warheads. We've got many nuclear tests and the ability to miniaturize those nuclear weapons. So across the board, from Clinton, Bush, and Obama, boy, oh boy, we have failed miserably.
Well, now we have new unilateral U.S. sanctions against North Korea. It's law. Will it have impact?
I got to tell you, I'm skeptical. And I'm skeptical because unless you get after the money coming from China, which again is 90% of what he needs to move forward with his nuclear weapons program, you're not going to have the impact you want. Let me give you an analogy. Let's say, Larry, you earn $10,000 a month, right? If I took away $100 or $200, maybe even $300, you'd probably be a little bit disappointed and frustrated with me, right? But you're not going to fundamentally change your life. But what if I took away $5,000 of the $10,000 you earned every year? Now we got talking a whole different calculus. You might even be moving in with a friend down in their basement. I mean, that really is the degree of impact that we need. It's what we did with Iran. Sanctions have to bite, and they haven't thus far.
Now, what's China's position in all this? Is China worried about North Korea at all?
You know, they are and they aren't. I got to tell you, it's been one of the frustrating things to watch, having been a former agency officer, that they're not fundamentally as worried as we are for this reason. They like a nuclear-armed North Korea. Now, some people may think, God, that's surprising. Why would they possibly want that? The reason why is they look for what's called a buffer state, right? They know that in South Korea, you have thousands upon thousands of U.S. soldiers, in addition to South Korean soldiers, who are just waiting for that day of reunification or for the North to fall. If that were to occur, you would have G.I. Joe's boots on the ground right on the border with China. That to China is something that they simply cannot endure, and they won't stand for it. So whatever we do to move forward, Secretary Kerry being in China now has to address the fundamental challenge that China has about U.S. soldiers right on their border.
Does Beijing have any control over North Korea?
Absolutely they do. The bottom line is with 90% of the foreign revenue going into that country coming completely from China, they have the ability to shut off roads, railroads, electricity. They have a slew of things that they can do to bring the Kim Jong-un regime to its knees. But what it takes is a threat to U.S., I should say, not only the relationship, but to Chinese internal interests, right? So China wants more than anything else internal stability. The day that we and our allies go in the region with heavier weaponry, we start talking to Japan about the basing of nuclear weaponry, perhaps, something that would be very much saber-rattling to some, it would get China's attention. They would understand that the U.S. has come to a sincere, unlike Syria, a sincere red line that we will not allow nuclear weapons to continue to not only be built in North Korea, but the nuclear weapons and the ballistic missile capability that they're selling around the world, to include Iran.
You have said you believe the U.S. should move forward with THAAD, which is the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System, to the Korean Peninsula. Why?
A couple of reasons. One, it's in our best interest to protect the homeland from a ballistic missile threat, and certainly to our allies in Japan and South Korea. So we've got to move forward with that piece. It has the ability to shoot down these missiles that North Korea could launch. The second piece, and in fact why China is not particularly pleased that we're moving forward with this system, is that it represents yet one more piece of military hardware right in their backyard. They're opposed to it for that reason. So the more that we, oddly enough, the more that we move military activity and weaponry and personnel into the region, the more that China starts to pay attention. And that's the piece that, unfortunately, is what it's going to take. It's going to be a phone call from the president who says, listen, President Xi, China, you help solve this problem, or we're going to do it either via military action, God forbid, or covert action. And we are willing to negotiate this out, but we can no longer stand for a nuclear-armed North Korea with the ballistic missiles to hit the U.S. homeland.
From America's national security standpoint, what concerns you more, North Korea, China, or the Islamic State?
Holy smokes. You know, short-term, North Korea, and I'll tell you why. They have not only the ability to deliver the nuclear payload to the United States, they have a degree of unpredictability around what they might do with that nuclear payload, right? Kim Jong-un is crazy. He's absolutely unpredictable. He could wake up one morning because he feels slighted or angry or for whatever particular reason, just off for the day, perhaps he's drunk, and he decides to push a button. You know, there is no command and control there to ensure that he uses his nuclear weaponry or weaponry in a rational way.
What does North Korea gain by bombing the United States?
It would mean their annihilation. But we're thinking about things rationally, aren't we? Right? Kim Jong-un and his family don't. They don't live in a rational world. They live in a nation that believes that their leaders were born in magic caves and they had dragons in them. They live in an alternative universe. So you and I can both sort of look at the situation rationally, and we can assess the situation differently than what they do. And it's a frightening situation.
Which of the group of candidates all running for president, you're a former CIA operative, you can have an opinion,
Sure.
Do you think would handle this situation best?
Boy, I'll tell you what, at the end of the day, when you take that oath and you walk in, you pledge to support the country and the Constitution, irrespective of your political party, your gender, your sexual orientation. You're there to defend the nation. So at the end of the day, the agency and Department of Defense will support the president and make sure that he or she is most robustly informed as possible. But I'll tell you this. I think people want to ensure that they have a president who really understands why it's important that America leads, that we have this unique and important opportunity to continue to be a world superpower. And I think that there has been some degree of consternation as to whether or not that's been the case for the past number of years. So I think people are hopeful that perhaps as we move forward, we might have a leader who looks at the world a bit differently.
Do you have anyone you support?
I'm going to go into that voting pool, I think, probably holding my nose and pulling a lever. I don't. I'll let the American people decide at the end of the day. But boy, it's a tough election. I think from a national security perspective, there's no perfect candidate, except for you, of course. Well, let's have you run.
I'm a little old. Thanks, Bryan. Thanks for joining me today.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Look forward to having you back on soon.
Can't wait.